From VOA Learning English, this is the Economics Report in Special English. Can you think your way to wealth and success? Napoleon Hill believed that if you think the right thoughts, you can. In 1937, he published the book Think and Grow Rich. Napoleon Hill spent many years researching financial success and observing people who had become rich. Although it was published in the middle of the Great Depression, it was an immediate success. Think and Grow Rich remains one of the most popular nonfiction books ever written. Forbes magazine says it has sold 70 million copies since it first appeared and continues to sell today. Napoleon Hill wrote at least 10 other books about success before his death in 1970. None of Hill's books came close to selling as many copies as Think and Grow Rich. But for today's generation, Think and Grow Rich is now available in a different form. Smarter Comics has released an illustrated version of the book. Franco Arda is the company's founder and publisher. He used to work as an investment banker. He started the company 3 years ago with his own money. He wanted to create picture books that increase understanding. His versions provide much of the information that is in full-length books, but in an easy-to-understand picture or comic form. Franco Arda says readers will understand and remember more about gaining success if they read the comic book version of Think and Grow Rich. He says pictures make the book easier to remember. He says the book taught him to change the way he thinks about money and success. Smarter Comics says the book tells how wealth is a lifelong pursuit achieved by believing in the value of personal ideas. It says anyone can achieve their dreams by refusing to be stopped by temporary problems. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal. This is the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. Kickstarter is a website where people give money to support creative projects. It started in 2009, mostly to help artists and musicians. Now, inventors, people starting businesses, and a growing number of farmers are raising money on this site for crowdsourced funding. Josh Brill and Meadow Squire grow vegetables and rice in Tinmouth, a town in the northeastern state of Vermont. Last year, they used Kickstarter to raise more than $6,000 to increase their rice production. 76 people watched the couple's 6-minute video and believed enough in their dream to send them money. Another farmer in Vermont, Scott Nelson, raised almost $9,000. He wanted to document the growth and development of his farm to teach others who are interested in organic farming, as a video explained. Bigger ideas have raised much more for some farmers among the projects on Kickstarter. In all, on a recent day, there were 4,500 creative projects seeking money on the site. Site officials reported $3 million in weekly pledges. To raise money on Kickstarter, people need to think of a project with a clear goal. Then, they need to get the project approved by the site. Many project creators make a video to explain what their project is and why people should support it. Projects have a time limit, generally about 30 days, to meet their funding goal. Kickstarter uses an all-or-nothing funding method. Projects do not get any money unless they meet their goal. Kickstarter gets 5% of the money raised, but only if the goal is met. Amazon.com takes another 3 to 5% for credit card processing fees. To get people to pledge money, projects also include a list of thank you gifts for different levels of support. Josh Brill and Meadow Squire gave supporters rice, seeds, and, for fun, good karma points. They say they are happy with their experience using the site to raise money for their new rice patties. Meadow Squire calls it free advertising for them. Many people now know they grow rice and know more about their farming practices. She points out that the experience would not have been the same if they had just gotten a loan from a bank. Josh Brill says one pledge came all the way from New Zealand. In his words, "When someone is willing to put up their money for your farm, that means something. It's like you would feel bad if you couldn't succeed for them." For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. This is the VOA Special English Economics Report. Facebook is the world's biggest social network. It has over 900 million users worldwide, and it reported $3.7 billion in sales for last year. The company has been privately held since 2004. That was when Mark Zuckerberg and several classmates at Harvard University started Facebook as a business. But on May 18th, Facebook becomes a publicly traded company. That means its shares will be listed on the NASDAQ stock market and sold to the public. Interest in the stock kept building after Facebook announced details of its initial public offering, or IPO, earlier this year. The IPO will make billionaires of the company's founders, including Mr. Zuckerberg. Eduardo Saverin, a Brazilian-born co-founder, has been strongly criticized for recently giving up his United States citizenship. By doing so, he will avoid a 15% tax on the value of his shares. He now lives in Singapore. Shortly before the trading started, Facebook told the Securities and Exchange Commission that it wanted to increase the number of shares being offered to over 420 million. The company had earlier said it planned to offer 337 million. The starting price was set at $38, also an increase. Some financial experts say Facebook could raise $16 billion, making it one of the biggest IPOs ever. Most of Facebook's revenue comes from online advertising. But the company also says it expects to earn money from fees charged on the sales of virtual goods. These are digital products used in social games, not physical goods. Facebook says it sees important income coming from this new market, which could reach $14 billion by 2016. Not everyone is pleased. General Motors ended its advertising agreement with Facebook just before the stock began trading. The car maker said it did not see results from the millions of dollars it spent on advertising with Facebook. And Facebook has been criticized for some recent business decisions. It offered $1 billion to buy Instagram, an application for sharing photographs. The deal requires government approval and has yet to be finalized. So, is Facebook worth the price of the stock? That will be for investors to decide. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. You can read, listen, and learn English with more business stories at voaspecialenglish.com.
I'm Avi Arditi from VOA Learning English. Welcome to this special Election Day edition of our Skype call-in show. It is Election Day where Americans are electing a president, the entire House of Representatives, you see the Capitol building behind me, and a third of the Senate, plus state and local elections. My colleague Carolyn Presutti from VOA News, who's normally with me when we do these shows in the studio, is actually in Boston covering the Romney campaign. Hi, Carolyn.
Hello, Avi, and hello to our Skype contacts from all over the world. I am in Boston, which is in the state of Massachusetts. We are in South Boston at the Convention Center. You can see behind me, I am currently in the Press Filing Center. At about 7 o'clock our time, which is about 5.5 hours from right now, this room will be filled with media of all types, radio, TV, internet, reporters, and what they'll be doing is filing their stories for the outcome of election night. And as you can see right now, we have all kinds of huge monitors behind us. This one is on Fox News and this one is on CNN. In this very building is where Governor Mitt Romney will arrive once the polls close and once the election starts to firm up and it appears that we might get a winner. He will come to this building and he will go to the ballroom where he will address all of his supporters who are gathered here tonight. Either it will be a concession speech if he loses, or it will be a victory speech if he wins and he's named the next president of the United States. So you can tell here in Boston is where all the Republicans are gathered in hopes that their candidate wins the presidency tonight. So Avi, I know you have a lot of questions from our viewers all over the world. Let's get started on that.
And first I should point out that your colleague Dan Robinson is covering President Obama from the Obama campaign headquarters in Chicago. Probably doing the same thing right now and getting ready for election night returns. Carolyn, I understand we have a caller on Skype from Tunisia. Hi.
Great.
You're on with Avi and Carolyn.
I'll bring it.
Yeah, how are you?
Hi, can you hear us?
Yes, good. I'm Yassin from Tunisia.
From Tunisia. Hi, welcome.
Welcome.
What's
your
Thank
question
you very
about the
much.
election?
Are you following the news?
I'm just astonished because it's a very great moment. So it's one of the best day in America. So we appreciate there is many crowd of people. They celebrate maybe Obama. I didn't hear yet who won, but I think it's Obama. If I am clear, if I'm right.
Well, we will know. I mean, this is. I'm going to hold up some of the newspapers. I'm going to hold them up to the camera here. You'll see some of the headlines, like on the Wall Street Journal, Decision Day in America. It's Decision Day from USA Today. New York Times, state by state, battle for presidency goes to voters. One more, Washington Post, now it's the voters' turn to speak. So we'll find out. It could be as soon as tonight. We will know the winner potentially, or it could take a little longer. Sometimes it takes longer to count the votes, but so now
and that's what's so unique about the American way that we handle our elections. It truly is suspenseful until the very last vote is counted tonight, and all the different states call in their results, and we find out with the electoral votes who ends up winning the presidency. Very different than maybe other countries where you're calling from. And of course, Tunisia, with your changes, have a very different way of your political methods too.
Certainly. So now, Carolyn, actually, why don't you mentioned the electoral vote. Do you want to explain a little bit about how a president is elected?
This is one thing that our Constitution sets down. It is not a popular vote that wins the presidency. So, say if you live in Maine, one of our northern states, if you live in California, our western state, if most of the people in one state vote for a candidate, then that state's electoral votes go in to add up to see who will become the president. So let me give you some concrete examples. You know, we have what are called battleground states, and they each have a group of electoral votes. And it doesn't matter if you would take the entire population of the United States, and if you have more people vote for candidate A and less people vote for candidate B, it might not mean that candidate A would win. Instead, it depends on individual states, and those states that are rich with electoral votes, then that entire state would go towards the vote for that candidate. I know it's a bit confusing, and it's actually, you'll probably understand it better when you see the different readings from the states, how many electoral votes from each state go toward winning the presidency. Like Florida, that's our state to the south, has 29 votes. Ohio has 18. Virginia has 13. Wisconsin has 10. Colorado has 9. All those states that I mentioned and a couple more are called battleground states. They're swing states. Sometimes they vote Republican. Sometimes they vote Democrat. But they're very important to find out who becomes the president this time around.
And we should point
years.
out that there's the relationship between the population and the electoral vote, that each state has at least 3 electoral votes, one for each senator, and each state has 2 senators, and every state has at least 1 member of the House of Representatives. And the number of electoral votes equals the number of members of a state's congressional delegation. So California, the most populous state, is going to have many more electoral votes. And what is it? 48 of the 50 states, if you win the popular vote, you win all of the electoral votes. And there are 2 states where they're divided based on the congressional districts. It's a little confusing, but it has to do a little bit, with connected to population. Okay, and Carolyn, we have a caller now on Skype from Algeria. Hi, thanks for calling.
I have heard through my activity on Facebook that Obama is going to make it lawful for gays to marry. And I wonder if this will affect negatively or positively the American society.
I think she's asking if it reflects negatively or positively on America's population. Is that right? Because Obama was the first sitting president to come out publicly in favor of same-sex marriage. Right. Whether or not it reflects negatively or positively might not be exactly what you mean, but it certainly shows you how this country has evolved and how we've changed. I really doubt if this would have happened 20, 50 years ago, but it's just that this country has become more inclusive. I mean, even the fact that we have an African American as president and we have someone running for the presidency as a Mormon, those are both history-making events. Never has that happened in our history. So I think that, again, gives you the idea of this country becoming more inclusive in its views.
And
Avi, do you agree?
Well, we should point out that there are some states, I believe a few states, have ballot measures dealing with this question
Maryland.
of same-sex marriage, and a number of states have passed state constitutional amendments, barring same-sex marriage. There have been other movements to legalize it, and Carolyn, as you point out, the president did speak out in favor of it, and the first president to do that. But it's hard to know what effect that might have on the election or on the, as you say, the image of the U.S. So now,
I heard one political analyst say Americans are very much concerned about the economy, and they're so focused in this election that that's going to turn the election. That's what I hear, and the other causes this election cycle have kind of fallen by the wayside, that people are so focused on unemployment, economy, deficit, everything dealing with numbers.
I know, Carolyn, this morning it was, we waited, my wife and I waited 45 minutes in line. It was 6 in the morning to vote. There was already a long line at our polling station, and it was freezing, but People wanted to, to vote, and Virginia is one of those swing states there that you referred to earlier. Could go either way. Could have an important effect on the election, and it's one of the states where there'll be early returns coming in when the polls close at 7 o'clock tonight. One of the first states that might be reporting the results.
That's definitely right, Avi. And also, there's another aspect of our election which not too many people might know about. Because I'm here in Boston, I can't vote in Boston because I don't live in Boston. So I did early voting. And Friday, I went to a polling place in my county and went ahead and voted. And there was a long line then. I waited an hour and a half on Friday night to vote, but it was cut off at 9 p.m. Nobody could do any early voting after 9 p.m. And then everyone has to wait until Tuesday to vote. But in my state, Maryland, 1 million people already voted before election day. And that's something new. Avi, when you and I were young, nobody could early vote. You voted by absentee, but you couldn't go in person to a polling place to vote. So that's another idea of how we're changing with the times, people's schedules, people traveling all over the world. We want as many Americans to be able to vote as possible.
Well, and the interesting thing about the early voting this year, since you brought that up, the President Obama actually broke with tradition and voted early. Was it October 25th, I believe? He was in his hometown of Chicago, and he went to vote. I believe you're with the Romneys. The Romneys voted this morning. Is that right?
They voted this morning in Belmont, Massachusetts, which is a suburb of Boston. It's about 25 minutes from here. And we spent some time in Belmont yesterday. It's a very historical town. About 25,000 people live there. And the Romneys raised their 5 sons in Belmont at a big, sprawling house. It had 7 bedrooms, 6.5 baths, and they sold that home. And they what's called downsized. So they purchased a smaller home a couple years ago that just has 2 bedrooms. But that house sold for $3.5 million, the one in Belmont that they raised their boys, where they raised their boys.
I'm looking at some of the comments that we've gotten on the VOA Learning English page on Facebook, where we asked our audience who they think should win. And Mohammed Mahamoud Farah wrote that he thinks President Obama will win, and he said, here are the reasons. Since Obama came to the White House, the U.S. economy has recovered. 2, he managed to withdraw troops from Iraq, and 3, he still has a lot of supporters. Now, let's see, another one from George Castellanos wrote that, quote, obviously, President Barack Obama will continue in the White House as president for the simple reason that Mr. Romney, and this person wrote, looks like an unpeaceful man, and the world needs peace defenders. I guess it's time to think about international peace. Now, Suvik wrote that Mitt Romney will win because, quote, he has been very clear on how to make America more attractive for mid-sized and small businesses that create most of the jobs in the U.S. It's about jobs in the economy more than anything. That's the point you made earlier, Carolyn. And he said, this person says, quote, he'll also fix the broken immigration system, and he's a confident guy. So that's what Suvik wrote. And we have you can add your comments at the VOA Learning English page on Facebook. We have Mohammed from Algeria, another caller from Algeria on Skype. Mohammed, go ahead.
Hi, Mohammed.
Good morning.
Hi.
Well, yes.
So,
Yeah, I guess you want me to comment about the U.S. election.
Please, what's on your mind? Who do you think will win?
I am not a specialist, but I guess he will be Obama.
And why do you
say that, Mohammed?
Why?
Is it for economic reasons, for foreign policy reasons? Why do you think?
Maybe for the second one, for foreign policy.
Foreign policy.
It seems that Obama is more peaceful than Romney, I think.
Thanks, Mohammed.
Well, Carolyn, so you've got a long night ahead, right? You've got
We do, but exciting.
Yeah, that's right. Your day
It's always
has
exciting on election night. It can turn out anyway. It's fascinating. And especially this election is so very close. If you look at the polls, they are still neck and neck. If you talk to one member of one campaign, they'll call it one way, somebody else will call it another way. Who knows what's going to happen tonight? It should be an exciting night, Avi. And I have to tell you, when we speak to our viewers from all over the world, it's fascinating to me how tuned into our election they are. Because as you and I both know, there are some Americans that aren't as well read on our election as our viewers are. So it's fascinating to hear from them.
Well, great. Well, Carolyn, why don't we wrap up here? And I know your day is just beginning. You're going to be covering Governor Romney tonight, whether it's an acceptance speech or a concession speech. We'll find out. And
That's right.
And as you said earlier, for complete election coverage and the latest results, go to voanews.com. And in the days ahead, we'll be following all the results. With Carolyn Presutti in Boston with the Romney campaign. I'm Avi Arditi from VOA Learning English. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
This is the VOA Special English Technology Report. A new online service offers a simple way to let other people know how to say your name correctly. It lets others hear you say it yourself in your email. Today, more people from different cultures work, live, and study together. Some worry that having a difficult name could limit them. Just ask Sheetal Dubey. She and her husband came to the United States from India 7 years ago. She says, Sheetal is a very common Indian name, and in India, people would just know how to pronounce it. But I've been working here in the US for some time, and I realize people find it hard to pronounce. They haven't heard it before. Ms. Dubey was a user experience consultant for technology companies. She now owns a new company called AudioName. She came up with the idea after doing a presentation with someone she worked with. She says, "My colleague was Mary, and it was very easy for everyone in the room to say, you know, Mary's findings showed this. But it's very difficult to say Sheetal's findings showed this. So that's where this idea really stuck in my head. It's like, you know, what if I just have an audio name and, you know, I put it in my email and they have a chance to hear it before they meet me?" Ms. Dubey presented her idea at a business development conference in Portland, Oregon earlier this year. It won the top award at the event called Startup Weekend Portland. The service is free. Ms. Dubey hopes her idea will help make introductions a little easier. People can put a recording of their name in their email signature, their Facebook page, their LinkedIn account, or their website. The Portland Seed Fund chose her idea as one of 126 startups to receive money and mentoring support from experts. Ms. Dubey left her job to start AudioName.com. The site has been live since the middle of September. Marketing specialist Larry Shigoris is the author of The Secret to Getting a Job After College. He advises people with really difficult names to consider using a nickname in their job search. Sheetal Dubey says she heard advice like that while researching her idea. She thinks a service like AudioName offers a better choice. There are also sites like hearnames.com, where people can learn how to say names from around the world. On our site, voaspecialenglish.com, you can find a link to VOA's own pronunciation guide to names in the news. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. Group cognitive therapy is a form of mental health treatment. A study has found that this form of talk therapy can help rape victims in countries where there are few trained psychologists. Researchers say the findings show that counselors in a community can be trained to provide group cognitive therapy. Judith Bass is a professor of mental health at the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health in Baltimore, Maryland. She says rape victims can face a series of short and long-term problems. These include depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Sudden sounds or events can bring back memories of the attack. Professor Bass says sexual violence affects not just the victims, but also their communities. Warring groups use rape to dehumanize and humiliate their opponents. Judith Bass says women who are raped often suffer from social stigma in their communities. They experience fear and worry about whether they can meet the needs of their families. Cognitive behavioral group therapy has been shown to work in Western countries. Judith Bass and other researchers investigated whether it could help women in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The DRC has faced more than 30 years of conflict since 1960. After 6 months, 42% of those in individual counseling who were depressed at the start of the therapy no longer showed signs of depression. By comparison, 70% of those in the cognitive therapy groups were no longer depressed. In these groups, the women discussed goals and learned skills for overcoming their depression and symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. For VOA Learning English, I'm Laurel Bowman.